Roll call, please, Mrs. Armstrong.
Mrs. Boynton?
Here.
Mrs. Macklin?
Here.
Mr. Akins?
Present.
Mrs. Turner Birch? Mrs. Carter?
Here. Thank you. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Carter.
Visitors are always welcome at our board meetings. If you wish to address the board, please complete the form provided upon arrival at the meeting and give it to the treasurer. Oral presentations are limited to 3 minutes each so that the meeting may proceed uninterrupted. Please silence all electronic devices.
Thank you. First, before we start our meeting, we would just like to welcome back our board member, Mrs. Macklin, who's been out, and we've missed her so much, and so she's still a little under the weather, but she says, I'm not going to miss another meeting, so she's here. So we're so glad to see you, Sharon. On our agenda is item number 2, presentation for our ELA curriculum, and we will hear that presentation from our Executive Director of Academic Achievement, Mr. Kenyon Harrington. And his team.
Board President, Mrs. Boynton, Superintendent Dr. Johnson, Board of Education, as always, thank you for the opportunity for us to come and present. As said, today we're going to be presenting on our K-12 English Language Arts curriculum adoption. As always, we like to keep our goals in the forefront as well. Today's presentation focuses on goals 1 and 2. If you remember last year when we did our math curriculum adoption, the one thing that we talked about was ensuring that as a district we're bringing the necessary resources to our schools and our educators to make sure that they're high quality and also impacting our students in a positive way that closes achievement gaps and provides opportunities to explore knowledge in different ways. The one thing that we identified through our curriculum adoption under Ohio Revised Code, making sure that everything is aligned to the science of reading and those strategies for effective literacy instruction. Our curriculum adoption met the guidelines outlined by ODEW as far as approved core curriculum and instructional materials as well. I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Warzencroft, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. We conducted a lengthy review process in which we reviewed reports by Ed Reports and only selected material that met or exceeded the standards that they set forth first. Then we created an adoption that was made up of teachers, support staff, administrators that all came. We requested sample materials that we identified. The top 3 were Houghton Mifflin, Into Reading and Into Literature, McGraw-Hill, Wonders and StudySync, and Savas, My View and My Perspectives. We allowed the group and the team to review materials. Then we brought in vendors so they could present to the team. We used a rubric to evaluate each of the materials with a robust lens of equity. We discussed rubric results and came to a consensus, and then provided an opportunity for feedback for community members as well. And then we're here tonight for our recommendation. This is a list of the staff members. We had over 40 staff members involved. And now Ms. Martin will talk a little bit about the K-5 ELA rubric.
All right, so for this process, we did use a rubric from the Reading League. It is based in the science of reading, and the statements or questions are directly related to the following 7 areas. So it addresses word recognition, language comprehension, reading comprehension, writing assessment. We also did include an equity review, which I will speak about a little bit later, as well as open comments. The 6 through 12 rubric included
adapted material from the ODEW, and comprised of 6 categories: alignment with Common Core standards, key shifts in Common Core standards, instructional supports, assessment, the equity review that we added, and then open comments at the end.
So within our rubric, we did include an equity review. We felt as though it was really important to do this in order to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in considering our new curriculum materials. And as you can see there were multiple statements that were included on the rubric that teachers then indicated whether or not, after the review of the curriculum, if it was evident that those items appeared. And so tonight we are making the recommendation for SAVIS MyView for our K-5 ELA curriculum. It is powered by the science of reading. It allows deeper practice to bolster daily explicit and systematic foundational skills. There is targeted foundational writing instruction, more integration of reading and writing instruction, knowledge building library that sparks engagement, exposure to multiple themes, cross-curricular concepts. It also includes increased differentiation and language support for our multilingual learners, and then there's seamless student navigation with the all-inclusive student edition. Also included in this program, we will receive the Teacher's Edition, Student Interactive Workbook, Reading Routines Companion, an Intervention Focused Workbook, Engaging Literature for all of our students K-5, and then there's also K-2 Foundational Practice Skills, and then 3 to 5 Word Study and Practice Reading and Writing Companion, and finally the digital program components as well. So these are just some open-ended comments that some of our K-5 teachers commented on as a part of the rubric, and so we just wanted to capture these here. I won't take the time to read them because I see the timer is going, but just know that this curriculum was highly thought of, and it was spoken highly of as well. Now I'll turn it back to Mr. Worsenkopf.
Thank you. Our committee landed on a recommendation for SAVAS My Perspectives as well. So there will be alignment through K-5 all the way through 6 through 12. Some of the key components here: engaging content, scaffolding for all learners, formative assessment and progress monitoring within the system, collaborative experiences with home writing, speaking and listening skills. And it is set up so that each unit has a very specific and structured format, which is always good for kids. So the format kind of follows an introduction, a whole class learning, a little bit smaller peer group learning, and then independent learning, and then reflection and response from the students. And then, of course, performance-based assessments. A few other program components: we'll have teachers' editions, interactive students editions that we will get each year, and then a grammar workbook, and then of course digital components that come with the adoption as well. A few comments here. Again, I won't take the time to read them all, but there were very positive comments from our committee. Moving forward, the professional development success plan for our teachers. With an adoption, we feel that it is very important to develop our teachers and help them with that professional development and learning how to use the material itself. So we have lots of training sessions planned, starting from the beginning of the year and flowing all the way through to the end of the year. We made it. Are there any questions?
You have any questions for it?
The 6 through 12 version as well.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Are we aware of what the assessments would look like? What percentages we're looking for the students? Or is this just the beginning, so we'll set the bar for that happen first year?
Yeah, once we get into the materials, we can dig in a little bit deeper and look at the specific assessments that the material has outlined for us.
Now, that was one of my questions too. I was just speaking on all the components that come with it. And I just wanted to know if the program had strong areas in writing in that assessment. So do you have to supplement the writing, or is the writing embedded?
It's embedded.
It's embedded.
Yes.
I know that this is an initiative, and I just want the audience to know, and I want to emphasize that because I know that we're affected by too at the district that I work in, that the Science of Reading is an initiative by Governor DeWine, and so there was, I know so many vendors that were out there, and so the districts had to make a selection on the Science of Reading. It was a must. It wasn't an option, it was a must that we selected a vendor to use within our school district, Bedford City School District, and then very expensive vendors as well, and I want to say that too. And I know that it took you guys a lot of time and a lot of work in following that rubric and getting our teachers to volunteer and to buy into something that's very new. And I just want to say that, and I want to commend the teachers and of course your team for making that happen, because it's a very long, strenuous process, and you want to do what's best for our children and for our district. So it takes a lot of time, a lot of dedicated and committed individuals to partake in this, and then to make a major decision if this is what we think is best for the district. So I want to commend you for getting it done, and getting it done at the end of the school year so we can begin at the next school year, because I know that the initiative said we have to implement these in 24-25. So very short time, a lot of, because actually the vendor list did not come out as scheduled. It was supposed to be out the early part of the year, and though it took a month and a half for it to actually be complete, and then you had to get all of these things in place, get the staff involved. I know it was a very time-consuming process. Again, thank you to the teachers that were involved in this and selecting a program, and I hope it just is the best thing for Bedford. So thank you. Any other comments or questions for it? All right, thank you, and thank you for watching the clock. All right. Next on the agenda is item number 3.02, and it is a presentation from our athletic directors for the middle school spring athletics. So if you could come forward now, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I stand before you again, like I did last year, with great news. Our Heskett students, athletes have done it again. You can definitely applaud that. That's the clock though, so we'll keep our applause down. Real quickly to go through some of these accolades. Our baseball team did go 8-1, it's actually 9-1. They did lose one to one of the Cleveland Heights teams on a Monday, and they came back and beat them on Tuesday. So they avenged their only loss and were able to once again capture the LEL crown. They are coached by Coach Cosmerell and Coach Milne, both teachers at Heskett Middle School. And the best thing about this group is that they played together for 2 years. Their pitching and hitting really grew over those 2 years. I'm sorry, do I have any baseball players in here? You can raise your hand, thank you. Once again, our softball, any softball players in here? Our softball players went undefeated for the second time in a row, going 9-0. Last year I got a chance to read the scores. I'm not going to read the scores again, but once again, they only played 2 full games before the 10-run rule was stopped. Their closest competition, they won one game 9-5 on Monday. That was their closest game. And the second game was stopped 21-0 the next day. We had great participation that day from our parents. We had over 20 parents show up for that game because we knew it was going to be a good game. They are coached by Raylene Jones, a Bedford graduate, of course, and our own coach Amarino, who coaches volleyball as well. girls track. Our girls track, once again, captured the LEL conference. If you look to the, let's see if I can get this to play. I think this kind of really showed how their track season went for a girls track. I know it's kind of hard to see. You see the one young lady running. We can't see him just yet. You'll see the girl coming. Our girls track team did this year. The young ladies to the left, those were the 4x1 team that actually went to states in Hilliard, Ohio, and got a chance to compete against other track young ladies against the nation. And on the right-hand picture shows our track championships coached by Coach Johnson and Coach Collins, who was here. You raise your hand, Coach Collins, real fast. Thank you. Oh, did I skip boys? Oh, where did boys go?
Oh, no, go back one. Go back one. I see it on ours.
No, there you.
Yeah, it's after softball, but I don't know why it's not showing on yours.
I'm sorry, guys. Well, our boys track, can you raise your hand real fast? Our boys track is coached by Coach Webster, who's a teacher at Heskett, and also Coach Caparelli, who's a 2020 graduate. He works with our throwers. Our boys track really outdid our girls track. I wish I could have a clip of them, but they were so fast I couldn't get them. They won the LEL by a total of 90 points, I believe. It was something ridiculous like that. Even if you combine the second and third places, they still wouldn't have lost. So our boys also got a chance to compete at Hilliard, Ohio. It was our 4x1 team, is that correct? 4x1 team got a chance to compete at Hilliard, Ohio for the state track meet. Okay. In summary, once again, we had a clean sweep. Our track team, boys and girls winning, our softball and our baseball winning. So this is my big thank you to everybody, all of our stakeholders. First, our coaches who devote a lot of time. Second, our bus garage. They are a huge help to us. Miss Stephanie and her team do a great job of getting us there every day, even 2 hours away to Hilliard, Ohio. I never had to call another AD and say, hey, we can't make it or we can't come. The worst I ever had to say was it would be 5 to 10 minutes late because of traffic. So we do a great job getting our athletes to and from the venue safely. If you look to the right-hand corner, you'll see a big mud puddle in the middle of our field. It looks unplayable, but by 4:30, Adam and his crew had that smoothed out, and we played baseball. So they do a great job of getting everything together. Our parents, they show out. They're always cheering, respectful, and they're loud. And we also have a good time at our games. So championship. Then we had a track meet. Then we had baseball. We had softball. So these things, they don't stop. They're always going. Our maintenance department and our custodial department do a great job. And last but not least, our security. No incidents this year at all. Our kids are well-mannered, well-behaved, and they're great athletes. So when you put all that together, we have a great time. Now I know what you've been waiting for, the future. I know you all like our last funny ones. We are winning 4 trophies a year over the next 5 years. That's about 20 to 25 trophies that are going to continue to grow. So I thought about why not start building our museum now. Some ideas we threw out there, just throwing out there, no names. Maybe the Macklin Trophy Museum, can hold up to 100 trophies in a day. Or the Birch Family Mountains, we can put our famous ADs on them, or our coaches who win 2 or 3 championships. And lastly, our Armstrong Trophy Tower, kind of something that, our community can look up to. No, I say this in jest and I say it in fun, but it's really been my pleasure to see these young men and young women grow for the last 2 years, and also to see our community come out and support them. So thank you all. I say it again, you win, I win, we win.
Great job, team, and coaches and parents. It takes a lot, so great job, great job. Love to hear the fact that there was no incidents. Everybody is well behaved, and I love to hear that about our students, because I know you all can do it.
Thank you so much for representing Bedford well. This is a great thing to see that Bedford represents. It's not just about one particular sport or one particular league. It's everybody coming together and just showing out. So thank you. You guys are the best.
proud to be a Bearcat, and I know you guys are too, because if you wasn't, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. It's so nice to hear and see a group of young adults get together without any hassle or any problems, because we know we can do it, and with the way things are going now, we need to continue. And I'm gonna be at the Macklin Museum. But I worked hard to get my name up there. So I just wanna say, you guys keep doing a great job, because think about it. A lot of this you're doing is looking for college. College is looking for you guys, and you're starting young.
Yeah.
So if you continue now, by the time you get here in the 12th grade, you'll have colleges knocking on your doors. And I've seen it happen, so I know it can happen. So good job, guys.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're so proud of you. And if all the athletes are there, could you just please stand? We just want to give you another round of applause. If you can stand, I want to see it. Come on. And parents, if you would just stand with them, because without you, they would not be where they are. So parents, we want to applaud you as well. So thank you very much. All right. Dr. Johnson?
Thank you. I just wanted, Mr. Brinson, before you slip out, I just want to thank the Board of Education because, you know, we hear a lot about our numbers at the leadership level. And so, Mr. Brinson, we could not do this without you. So I just want to thank the Board of Education for permitting us to have an assistant athletic director. I know there was a steal from the guidance department, but your dedication to our children and just our program in the Bedford City School Districts is huge. The growth that has occurred over the past 2 years under your leadership is just monumental, and I don't think people understand that is one person can't do this. When we talk to the rest of our league and what we're trying to do in the LEL, not just about athletics, but in terms of leadership, the things that he talked about, the academic piece is huge. And so as we know, when kids are connected to school, they are more successful. And so I just want to thank you for your support in this role in this position in our district, providing our students with more opportunities to be successful in and out of the classroom. So just thank you. Thanks, Mr. Brinson.
And Mr. Brinson, I do want to say that I just have to acknowledge, I'm just so happy that you acknowledged all the people that make this work. And we take it for granted that our transportation is going to be there, our custodians are going to do what they need to do, our maintenance department. And for you to acknowledge them, that's the relationship that you have built with those departments, and they too see the importance of working together as a team. So thank you for mentioning that, all your support. So thank you again. All right. Next on the agenda is item number 4, is the audience participation. There's a lot of folks here tonight. I'm sure you wanted something to say. So I hope you filled out a green card. Do we have any green cards? None at this time. All right. All right. Item number 5 is our consent agenda, which is 5.01. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please, as it's presented? Oh, you can excuse me. No, excuse me. Okay. I know there are a lot of children here. If you don't have school tomorrow. Just thought about that. We always excuse our young people because there's school the next day. If you would like, you can be excused at this time. If not, we're glad to see you. You can see, hey, you could be up here one day. Everybody staying? Okay, great. Good. You can stay up late tonight anyway. Maybe not.
One person get up.
All right. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda, item number 5.01. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please, as it is presented?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mr. Aiken. So board, I know we've looked over the consent agenda. Do we have any questions, discussion about any item on the agenda? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. Item number 6 is our superintendent's report. Dr. Johnson?
Good evening, Board President, Vice President, and Board members. Before moving on to the items under 6, if we have any new certificated or classified employees this evening, this would be that opportunity for you to introduce yourself and let us know the role or capacity that you'll be serving in. Though we have an individual that's not a new employee, I do see Delmar here that will be switching roles in the security department. So, Delmar, do you want to say anything? He's like, no.
Yes, you are on the spot.
Sorry.
I appreciate the nomination by Chuck and the request. I thank the board for even considering it. I thank Dr. Johnson. Going back to when I first got hired, we had a great conversation, put a name with a face, and I just really appreciate the conversation we had with Boynton. You know, we go back. Appreciate you. Ms. Lewis, we talked all summer before I got hired. She kind of eased my mind about how I was going to be up here. And then me, Chuck, and Connor came, from down the street, and we always been a squad, we've been a team, and I just came here just trying to do what I've been doing. Chuck stepped in, he's gonna be a good leader. We talk about stuff more than work. We talk about life, and besides being a good man, he's a man's man. And I just want to keep on learning behind him, learning up under him. And again, I just thank everybody for the opening, for the approval that I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Walker, I think you approved our new assistant principal last time and you had a conflict, but I wanted you to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Reginald Walker. I'll be the new assistant principal at Bedford High School. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to work with the young people of the Bedford community members and the staff as well. Under the tutelage of Principal Lewis, I look forward to growing as an administrator and continuing to impact the lives of young people. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't see anyone else. Thank you so much. Under 6, I have several items. I'm so sorry. I know you want to take each of them separately. The first one was 6.01. I ask of your approval of the following administrative personnel. Under 6.02, I ask of your approval of the classified personnel. Under 6.03, I ask of your approval of the following terminations. Under 6.04, I ask of your approval of the following recalls from reduction in force. Under 6.05, I ask of your approval of the following summer school personnel. Under 6.06, I ask of your approval of the adoption of the following ELA curriculum. Under 6.07, I ask of your approval of the following contract for our extended school year services. Under 6.08, I ask of your approval of the following handbook for the 24-25 school year. Under 6.09, I ask of your approval of the following liability insurance exhibit. Under 6.10, I ask of your approval of the following payment in lieu of transportation. Under 6.11, I ask of your approval of the following janitorial services. I will state for 6.12, I believe that has to come after 8.02. So I'm not sure, I think that has to be held off on because that's a part of the negotiated agreement.
But
Six point 12 needs to be voted on by the Board of Education after 8.02. Okay.
All right.
And I'm sorry, for the audience that's listening, that's the calendar, the changes in the calendar. So that will happen after 8.02 regarding the BEA negotiated agreement.
So you'll hear me say that that will be tabled, and then we'll come back after 8.02. All right. Well, Dr. Johnson, you have a long list here. So 6.01, could I please have a motion to approve the following personnel item 6.01?
Motion to approve the following personnel items.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and seconded by Mr. Aiken. Do we have any questions about this item? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Did you want to speak on it?
I did. I'm sorry, that was Mr. Commander sending me a message. I'm like, is he here? Under 6.01, I think that definitely I would have to say something. I see Ms. Lewisher in the back as well. I know she's gonna make a comment, but I'm sorry that I'm taking one of your people.
It's all good.
But it's definitely with honor that I appreciate your approval of Officer Hudson taking over as the coordinator of safety and security. I feel like the comments that you hear so many times, I hear often as well in regards to the leadership amongst our security team. What you and your team have been able to do over the past 2 years, not just in terms of making our students and staff feel safe, but they talk a lot about the relationships. I know we have other districts and coming and asking you guys to come and talk about the relationship that you have between our staff and our leadership and our students and our community. And I feel like that says a lot about you and your role and what you've been able to do. So I just want to thank the board for this approval of Officer Hudson to serve in this capacity. And I didn't know if there's anything that you want to say and to let us know if there's anyone that you have here with you tonight, but I will turn that over to you.
Yes. First, I wanted to thank Dr. Johnson, the board, the whole admin team, magnificent security team, our warden, Ms. Lewis. But it's a pleasure to be finally appreciated from the district and all the love that we getting this from me, Delmar. Delmar actually really said it all. Anybody know Delmar? He's a great speaker, so Delmar really said it all. But Officer Connor, we all came from Warrensville, like you said, and it's just a pleasure to be appreciated here. And I brought my mother, my wife, my daughter-in-law, my brother, son, my daughter, my son in the middle.
The whole thing.
Shane out there with my nephew. But
And we say thanks to your wife. We appreciate it. We know
Oh,
he
yes,
hear a lot.
But I really appreciate everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Hudson. It's just such a pleasure to have you here. I just wanted to say that someone called me this afternoon and said, I looked over their agenda and I see that Officer Hudson is being recommended for a position. And said, I'm just so proud of him. Just out of the blue, someone's called me to say that the relationships that he has built in the Bedford City School District and the hard work, because wherever you go, we got to see you. You're at everything, and we do thank you, Mrs. Hudson. You're at everything. We feel so protected now. Everybody's here. I'm so safe tonight, I don't know what to do. So So anyway, just aside, we do appreciate you and, thank you.
Thank you, and whoever that was, let them know that I appreciate it.
I'm sure they're listening. I will.
I just have to say, I've known your brother for years, and I would mess with him right now, but it's not about him, it's about you. But no, just the respect and the kindness that you have from students all the way up to adults, no matter the age. The courtesy that you give everybody, but yet you're stern. You can tell everybody respects you for that. And it takes a person like you to be in this position, and we appreciate that. And I'm glad that you're feeling appreciated here, because that's what we want to make sure that's happening. But no, I can't say enough thank yous for everything. Thank you to your family for giving you to us, because you are definitely here all the time. I'm blinking, you're right there. But no, great job with everything. And I only see great things from here.
I appreciate that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hudson. I just want to say, I've been knowing you for a long time. When I was security, when I used to go to Warrensville, they used to greet me at the door, "Here comes Sharon." And I'm like, oh, another school like this. But you guys always treated me good there, and I'm so, so, so glad you're here, because you remind me of me.
No, Miss Lewis.
Different. You're more patient than I am. And the
Johnson
things,
told me I had to be.
they used to call me and they say, "Now you can't do that." Okay, I can't do that. I go back and hard do it all over again. The kids respect that. They know when somebody care about them. They can feel it. And as long as they feel that you care, then you'll get the respect you deserve, and they'll get the respect they deserve. Because I always tell everybody, just because they're a kid don't mean you have to respect them. You have to give them respect to get their respect. And you're doing just that. And I just want you to keep doing such a wonderful job. Because one day your name's going to be up on the icon with mine. But thanks, and just enjoy your job and love the kids. And thank your family for letting you come. Your wife probably be like, "Man, a peaceful night." I know those nights too, but thank you for letting him come to Bedford and being able to do what he do, because we really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Definitely well-deserving. I thank you so much for accepting this position. Just to piggyback on everyone has already said, you're well liked in the districts. I mean, everybody knows you. You know that respect is a two-way street, and the whole security team that I've encountered has been very welcoming. You don't have any, negativity. Everyone is just positive. They're doing their job in a positive way, and I just appreciate that, because safety is a major thing. So we really appreciate you. We appreciate your family for having you attend all these events. Just as everyone else said, I see all the events I go to, so I know that you're always there, and your team is always there at all the gates, all the sporting events, and even just the school concerts. Just, you guys are everywhere, and we really appreciate your help. So it's well-deserving position, well-deserving person, and just thank you for your service.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you get the frog when you got home?
Did I hold?
Get the frog when you got home? Remember the phone call you got? There was a frog?
Oh my God, don't answer that.
No, it's not bad. We were out there talking, and your daughter called and said, "Here's a frog." Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure you got it.
That was my daughter right here.
I'm like, I don't know.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Item number 2 is 6.02, classified personnel. And I have a motion to approve the non-teaching employee limited contract as it is presented.
Motion to approve non-teaching employee limited contract as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Akins and second by Mrs. Macklin. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. 6.03, could I have a motion to approve the terminations as they are presented?
Motion to approve terminations as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mrs. Macklin. Questions, discussion, board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mr. Akins.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. Item number 6.04, recalls for reduction in force. Motion to approve the recalls as they are presented.
Motion to approve recalls as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mr. Akins. Any questions, board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Next on the agenda is 6.04, and that is for our summer school staff. Could I have 6.05, thank you. I need those glasses. Could I have a motion to approve our summer school employees as it's presented?
Motion to approve summer school employees as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mrs. Macklin. Do we have any questions or discussion? I would just like to say thank you to the people that are on here to teach summer school, which will be starting next week, June 10th. And so important after a long school year that we have people that want to commit to continue instructions to our students. It's very, very needed. So I just want to say that. So thank you to the teachers and the staff that are on this list.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes,
Mr. Akins.
Abstain.
and motion passes 3-1. And thank you again. It's very important. 6.06. Could I have a motion to adopt the ELA curriculum, please?
Motion to adopt the ELA curriculum as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Akins and second by Mrs. Carter. We've already discussed it, so I think we can move on to roll call, please.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes,
Mrs. Macklin.
Yes.
motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. 6.07, could we have a motion to approve the service contract as presented?
Motion to approve service contract as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter, second by Mrs. Macklin. Do we have any questions, board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes,
Mr. Akins.
Yes.
motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. 6.08, and that is our student handbook, parent-student handbook. Could I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve changes to the student parent teacher handbook.
Student
for-
parent.
Student parent handbook for the 2024-2025 school year as presented. It froze on me, sorry.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mrs. Macklin. Do you have any questions about the handbook, board? Hearing none, roll call, please. Mrs. Armstrong?
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mr. Akins.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. Item number 6.09, could I have the approval of the fleet/property liability insurance as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Macklin, second by Mr. Akins. Do you have any questions for it? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. 6.10, 6.10, could I have a motion to approve the resolution as is presented, please?
Motion to approve resolution as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mr. Akins. Questions, board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin.
Abstain.
Motion passes 3-1. Thank you, board. Item number 6.11, motion to approve the service contract, please. Could I have a motion to approve the service contract?
Motion to approve service contract as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter, second by Mrs. Macklin. Questions, board? Hearing none, roll call, please. Mrs. Armstrong?
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. 6.12, we will table it for now until we get to 8.02. So item number 7 is our treasurer's report.
Board President and board members, I have 2 items on the agenda tonight. The first item being gifts and donations. We have a couple of donations. The first, Planet Fitness donated 600 water bottles with an approximate value of $1,000. We had $2,000 donated from Let's Go Kids Transportation towards the 8th grade Detroit trip. We had donations from Petiti's Garden Center and American Turf Garden Center. One for the Glendale Discovery Garden and one for Teacher Appreciation Week. And then also the Downtown Bedford Auto donated a 2012 Kia Soul for the Auto Tech program. The second item is our standard then and now purchase orders that need approval. And due to the volume towards the end of the year, a lot of times purchase orders run out of funds. They just come in higher than we anticipate, so they have to add additional POs, and that's why a lot of these are then and nows.
All right, could I have a motion to approve 7.01, gifts and donations?
Motion to approve donations as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Akins and second by Mrs. Macklin. Do you have any questions about the donations? I would just like to say thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Item number 7.0. Could I have a motion to approve the treasury report as is presented for the purchase order?
You said motion, she said motion to approve.
Have a second?
I said,
Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
it's okay.
It has been moved by Mrs. Macklin, second by Mrs. Carter. Do we have any questions about the purchase order? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
And Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Item number 8 is our board education, 8.01. Could I have a motion to approve the separation agreement and resolution as presented, please?
Motion to approve separation agreement and resolution as presented.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mr. Akins. Do we have any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. 8.02, motion, could I have a motion to approve the agreement between BEA and Bedford City School District as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Macklin and second by Mrs. Carter. Questions? Comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mr. Akins?
Abstain.
Motion passes 3-0. I would just like to say something at this time. Whenever there's negotiations with our bargaining unit, you know, those are times when there's a lot of discussions about things that that we have to look at that's better for our district, for our children, for our teachers and our teaching staff. So I would just like to thank Dr. Johnson and the negotiation team, as well as president of the BEA and their team for coming to an agreement that So I really do appreciate you doing this in a very amicable way, and we really do appreciate this. Anybody else want to say something?
I would just like to take this opportunity, so you'll have it on record, Trish, that I did share that, just my 30 years as a teacher, this, you know, being a previous rep, believe it or not, and then as an administrator serving on a team for many, many times, this was the best negotiations process that I've experienced. I feel like we had some great discussions. Though we didn't always agree on everything, I feel like this says a lot about our teachers in terms of this agreement that we've come to at this point in time in the district and in public education. And I just want you to know that I've communicated that to our board, and I just wanted to say that to our community. That this agreement says a lot about our staff. This agreement says a lot about our staff. And so I thank you, Trish, and your team, and your teachers, because I know that this is not always easy. And I feel like just if people take the time to read through it, and the sacrifices that are being made, us having that agreement to come back next year and talk more, I just wanted to say I really appreciate that. And I feel like as a board, you needed to also hear that from myself and our leadership team, because not everybody is in this place. And we've been able to do this time and time again. I think even prior to myself being in this role, the work that has been done over the years, a lot of things we do outside of the negotiations agreement. So that says a lot about the work that has been done over years to get us to this point. When we talk about healthcare, when we talk about the teacher evaluation process, there's a lot of collaboration that happens. And so I just wanted to thank BEA and just thank you as a board for voting on this agreement.
Thank you. I think we should applaud for this. We did. Thank you, BA. Thank you. Alrighty, so we will. Oh, of course, please.
I do. First of all, I have to thank the team. Doug Dressman, who is actually our professional negotiator. He has done this far too many times to count. Christine Langen, Trisha Menson, Erin Estelle, Shonda Martin, and Barb Davila, who is here this evening. And of course, Susan Dodge, our LRC. We also thank the administration. Given the situation currently in the district, we feel we got a good contract for our teachers, and we appreciate it. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you. All right, now we will go back to 6.12, 6.12, and that is the amended calendar that we had to vote on the new contract first, which was part of the negotiation. So if I could have a motion to approve the amended 24-25 school calendar.
Motion to approve the amended 2024-2025 school calendar as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Akins and second by Mrs. Carter. Do we have any questions or discussion about the calendar board? I'm sure we all looked at it. Yeah, could you give us a little clarity, please? Thank you.
Yes, just some clarity with the new calendar is that, and I apologize because I know this, we keep putting it on, but this calendar takes that week of Thanksgiving, and the students and staff will be out that full week during Thanksgiving. So instead of just the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I think there typically have been an early release on the Tuesday, full day on that Monday. They will be off that full week. Also, that Friday before, that will serve as an early release PD day.
Could you talk about why those are, what those days are before the Thanksgiving?
What those days are, conference comp days. They're called conference comp days.
You may see them as compensatory days, if that's what they are, just so people that
Yes.
don't understand it. We're just not getting days off.
Yes, because I don't want people to think that it's
Yes.
just, oh, this is day off. Our teachers don't just show up and teach. There's a lot of work that happens outside of the work day. I think they would agree with that.
Yes.
And so this is called a compensation or comp day. I know in other industries it's called PT and things of that nature. So that is what it will say on the calendar in terms of comp days. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's, just a little clarity on that. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, board. And we are down to 9.01. And tonight is just a discussion. Everyone that's here on the page to participate discussion. I am going to have Dr. Johnson, who brought this to the Board of Education, to actually speak first on pay to participate, not pay to play. And Dr. Johnson.
Yes, myself and Ms. Armstrong, the treasurer, we've been having a lot of conversations just about the 5-year forecast. And again, that is what she's done a great job of, is us looking ahead to things and just trying to do whatever we can in terms of the deficit spending and things of that nature. So we are looking at all aspects. Just as I talked about our certificated staff making some sacrifices, as you can see, there have been some rifts and things of that nature. Now we're in the recall phase. But even after that, there are things happening behind the scenes, and we're going to continue these conversations in assessing the budget so that we can be fiscally responsible. For example, there are a lot of conversations even about the administrative team. Typically, when there's a negotiations process, it's kind of a me too. There is no me too at this time for the administrative team, because we felt it was important to look at the needs of our staff first, and the impact as well of that on the budget. So that's something that the community might not know or employees might not know, but those are things that are not on the table, which help with that 5-year forecast. Another thing that we're looking at is even administrative positions. So already changes are happening in terms of conversations and positions being eliminated at this time. Another piece of this is, I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to just make these decisions, but if we're looking at the budget and we're talking about where all the costs from, over the years we continue to increase. I feel like opportunities are excellent. We have to provide opportunities for our babies. But we also have to be honest with the fact that the majority of our community do not have children in schools. So they come out, they pass bonds, they pass levies, and things of that nature. Our costs go up, their costs go up, and I just said, after looking at the budget and the cost in terms of all the programming that we continue to add, how can we show some form of appreciation to those that are serving us? Because things are not, the money is not unlimited, right? And so when we looked at the cost, I think it was just in supplementals, the athletic portion of it, right? In terms of what it costs to run the programs, it was like $177,000 just to run it. So we looked at the number of athletes with Mr. Commander and the cost and said if we can even come up with a portion of that. So it's just a recommendation. And for us to kind of have this open discussion, it doesn't have to be that amount, but I just feel like we have to be able to offset something, because we can't just continue to maintain this pace. But we also want to ensure that we're providing opportunities for our students, but we also have to take into consideration Title IX. So when you add a male sport or activity, you got to also look at the female sport or activity or access to those opportunities. With this, we are not just saying to add this cost, but we also know we need to provide equitable access. So we are also looking at grants and things of that nature when students are in a bind, or maybe they just can't afford that, or letting families know well in advance of these things. But just the cost of the supplies, the uniforms, replacement of hurdles, things of that nature, especially for our sports that don't have gates, meaning there's no cost for you to get into the event. All our other sports are kind of compensating for that do have gates. So just those kind of things that we wanted to kind of put on the table to you to consider. But we felt it had to be an open discussion, because I'll tell you, I live in a community and there really wasn't an open discussion. And I don't feel like that's fair to our families or fair to you. It was just kind of a, this is what it is. I feel like there should be an open discussion and opportunity for us to kind of put it on the table. And then even if we get, I know we're gonna get some feedback. We can't please everyone, but I feel like everybody should have a voice and an opportunity to speak about the cost and what we could kind of do about it.
And I guess what I'll add to it is we've all heard the 5-year forecast. The last 3 presentations talk about us going into a deficit and into negative cash balance. The leadership team has a hard task in front of them, and we're looking at every possibility. When there's a ability to cut, we are looking at it. So this is just one of the many options that are on the table when it comes to cutting expenses. So the leadership team, again, felt that it's something, we saw the presentation tonight from Mr. Brinson, so we know sports are important, but we also thought this was something that was greater than us just making a decision on it and coming to the board about. So I appreciate the information. I definitely appreciate the fact that we're having the open discussion, being able to get feedback, being able to get information. Have we looked at sponsorships? Like I'm thinking outside the box. Like I understand the 5-year forecast. I'm completely on board with that. But I also know that there's going to be multiple families that's not going to be able to afford it. But this is one of those things that's keeping them focused in school, getting the grades they're getting. So I'm looking at all aspects of it. Have we ever looked into sponsorships or anything like that, and other ways to be able to contribute to this along with other options?
I think there's always a look at sponsorships. Most of our, there's the typical fundraisers and things of that nature. I will say, unfortunately, you still are tapping into the same families all the time. I think if you talk to individuals that are on PTA or they're, in the band boosters, you're still tapping into those same individuals all the time. So I feel like we will still continue to do that. We will still continue to work in terms of the, some grant funding options that are out there. For example, we talked about Martha Holding Jennings and things of those nature. They have several different types of grants. But again, that is kind of a reactive opportunity there. But I agree. I mean, we want opportunities, which is why we're not saying it has to be. For example, for those that didn't know, it was like the recommendation was somewhere around 100 per sport. That's just kind of that's a recommendation out there based upon the cost. That still does not even tap into half of the cost, but that would bring in about $47,000 to $50,000 towards the total cost. So I think there's just a recommendation that there's kind of a counter or something, but we know this is not a feeling. We know that we cannot sustain increasing.
Is this for uniforms that we're talking about, for their uniforms that they wear when they're in the sports? Because if they're not paying to play, they're more or less paying to help with uniforms, which, how can I say this? Which sometimes it might work out because of the fact that if I have to pay for my daughter to play softball, it's going to be better taking care of the uniforms. I did uniforms from '87 to 2013, and I'm telling you, they didn't have to pay a dime. The school always furnished their uniforms, but they didn't take care of them. Some of them uniforms I would take them home, I would have to soak them, I would take them to the cleaners, I would have the lady fix them. Sometimes it was out of my pocket and sometimes it wasn't. And then when we go somewhere, the kids were embarrassed because their uniforms look so bad, but they don't realize they wouldn't look like that if they took better care of them. But I understand that there's families that probably can't afford it. I understand that, but there's gotta be some way we can figure out for the families that really can't afford it to help them. But I feel that if a parent had to pay $100 or whatever for their child to wear a uniform, that parent's gonna also check and make sure that uniform is taken care of. As long as they're not paying for them, they don't care. Think about it. They don't care. Because what do they care? Oh, if you tear it up, don't worry about the school buying you another one. I'm telling you, I did them from 87 to 2013, and them uniforms were terrible. One girl brought a uniform back. She had it for 3 years, never been washed. Never been washed for 3 years. I told the athletic director, I'm throwing this in the trash. I would put on gloves to clean that stuff. So if they had to pay, they would take better care of it. The parents would make them take better care of them. I do believe that. And I do understand that times are hard, and it's some things, some people can't. But when it comes to your child, when it came to my kids, and I mean my kids are 25 years apart. When it came to my kids, if I had to give up something for myself, I did it for my kid. And if you really want your kid to play, you're going to give up getting your toes done. You're going to give up getting your eyebrows done. You're going to give up getting your nails done because your kid wants to do this. So, I mean, if the people think about what's really going on with this, they would understand. They would really understand because it's just, maybe by me working it and seeing it, it's just terrible. It was just terrible. And then when we would go somewhere, the kids would get mad because the other schools would laugh at them because of what they had. But the other schools were paying for them to wear the uniforms. One school we went to, the kids had to buy their uniform. So they had to take care for however many years they needed it. But I just feel that if a parent had to pay, I really think that they would take better care of it. If you don't have, somebody give you a car and say you're going to never have to pay for anything to be done, you're going to drive that car till you can't drive it no more. You're not going to put a penny in it because they're going to keep doing it. No, you can't do that. We have to look into what's going on with these uniforms and whatever, the equipment. They leave equipment laying around and laying out, and it's ridiculous. Like I said, it's something we got to figure out a way that these kids can dress in their uniforms, be clean, and really care about them. And I think if this is what it's going to take, then what can we say? Because I know if I had to, I would pay it. If I had to, I would pay it. I mean, I would have to give up something I want to do. Maybe give up a drink at the bar. Maybe give up anything. But I would have to give it up for my child to be able to do what my child want to do to keep them off the street. Because some of these kids, these activities keep them off the street, and on these streets is dangerous. So, I mean, if they really want to do it, a parent can take $10 a week, $10 a pay, $10 whenever, and put it in a jar, and there you go. Quit smoking, put it in a jar. I mean, there's things you can do when it comes to your kids. You think of anything. I know I did. Like I said, my kids are 25 years apart. So when it came to my kids wanting to do something in school, I found a way to do it. But I don't know how much they're going to have to pay or what they're going to have to pay. But I think if they have to pay something, I think they would take better care of them, because if they don't, then they got to pay for the uniform.
Ms. Armstrong was gonna, she wanna add a little bit to?
Ms. Macklin kind of talked about it. I was going to say that in some of the budget meetings with the athletic director, a large part of the cost was that uniforms are not turned in. They're not in good conditions when we get them back, so we're replacing uniforms faster than we are planning for. So she kind of spoke on the point that I was going to add. Again, this is something we're putting on the table, we're looking at it, but that was a factor in the cost, was the conditions of the uniforms when we get them back.
But when they didn't turn them in, they would put them on their fees at the end of the year. So the kids would go home and they'll find a uniform and bring it in. Okay, you brought this ragged uniform in, so you got away with it. They took it off your fees. You got away with it because you brought it in. But the point is, if we wouldn't have put it on your fees, you never would have brought it back. If you wouldn't have put it on their fees, they never would have brought it back. So the thing is, if they have to pay, then they would take better care of it and they would bring it back. I really believe that. I mean, 30 years of it, I'm telling you, it's gotta work. Something's gotta work somewhere. It might not be $100, but whatever it is, if you really want your child to play, you would find a way to do it. You find a way to do things you wanna do, let's find a way to do things our kids wanna do.
I believe that we also, and I'm sorry, I believe that we should have, there's always contracts between people, especially with something like that. I think we should have contracts with, there should be a form if they're gonna play football. Here's the athletic director's signature, here is the, well, no, but it was never, I don't think it was ever truly enforced either. And I would say when my children were born here, they never signed a contract. But I'm thinking, I'm not saying still take this off, I'm saying adding on additional resources for us to be able to cover our behinds at the same time. Having a contract, having the athletic director sign it, the student sign it, and the parent sign it, you have everybody on the hook for it. The parent already knows, and they get a copy of it sent home to say, hey, if it's late, if it's not brought in correctly, if it's torn, whatever it is, there's going to be a fee, and it's going to be on your student fees. I'm one person that thinks outside of the box all the time. I'm not saying take it off, but I'm saying we need to find additional areas in which we can, again, there are some parents who can't, there are some parents who can. For those who can't, find additional ways to be able to assist them.
And one of the things I also want to just clarify in terms of, this is pay to participate.
Right.
Not pay to play. So I also want to make that very clear that provide opportunities for children. Again, this just came forward to the top. I'm also asked, because when I'm out at communities and things of that nature, these are the things that come to me as well from our community members. So they also have talked about they still have costs that they incur as well. I'm not happy as a parent, either, but I also we get those conversations to us from some of your community members that say, I also have costs going up. We pass bonds and levies. I'm also on a fixed income. And so we ask of them to give a little bit more, right? And so I just want us to be able to have this discussion. So if by chance you decide, because this is a board decision, to vote that down, that as we move toward, and we have to go back to the community, because the only way to fund or operate public schools in Ohio is through levies. I just don't want you to be caught off guard or be in that position when we're asked these type of things. Have you considered? Or why haven't you considered? And then if we come back with, well, some students can't, well, have you thought about the grants and the funding and things of that nature? Because I too am on a fixed income, but I'm being asked to give. And so just to kind of think, sometimes a little bit about that.
Well, I actually know that we need to be fiscally responsible. We saw the 5-year forecast. We know what direction we're heading. This is definitely a good topic to bring up. I personally would say that we need to, before we get to this point, we need to make sure we haven't exhausted every other avenue first. As Mrs. Carter mentioned, I think we should look into corporate sponsorships. We have so many local businesses, even on the auto mile, they could maybe support us with something to pay for uniforms, to pay for this. Because some things that I think that we don't put into account is that even if you're your child participates in the sport, the parent still has to pay for other things out of pocket as well already. We have to pay for cleats, we have to pay for shin guards, pads, different types of equipment that's already coming out of pocket before they can even play the quote-unquote free sport that they're playing now. So to put that on, to put a fee on top of that, is gonna be a financial burden to many families in the district. It's also the fact that we have families that have multiple kids in the district. So if you have 2 or 3 kids and they're all playing sports, you're paying $100, what, an example, per child, or whatever the cost might end up being. It's just gonna be just not financially feasible for them to participate. So I'm not saying no completely to this, I'm just saying no right now to this. I think that we should look into what we can do now to kind of compensate for this and let this be maybe a last resort and not something we have to initiate for the upcoming school year.
And then thank you so much. I love those points. I feel like we also have to we also need to ask our families, because I know everybody is, a lot of families, they have to work, right? So they don't always have that time to give. But if we could kind of come together and corral with our families again, because if we go and we talk about the donations, we also need assistance. It can't be the committee of 4 or 5. So I'm just gonna ask that if I think our PTA councils, our foundation, I'm looking at some of our committees that put forth hundreds of thousands of dollars to support us. I'm just asking for all of our families, because we have about 400 athletes. Can we just make sure that they are consistently participating? I think, Trish, how many, you did the concession for years,
13.
I think. And we'll see this, I'm here 7, it's the same people all the time. JC is fighting to get help in the concessions. So there are systems set up to help, but I feel bad for the same few that come all the time. Because this is hard for me too. I don't want to ask this. This isn't a recommendation to Tabby, not me, because your kids are involved, my kids are involved. But I'm speaking on the behalf of all families and our staff. And so just your assistance as well to make sure that all families, if you guys choose to go this route and you're nope, not right now, then there is an expectation that they're gonna come and work concession stands, that they're gonna come and also help deliver letters, pull out letters, make the phone calls for the donations for their kids to participate. Because we can give them the numbers, you can text, you can do so many things, rather you don't even have to just give the time. But it's gonna definitely be an all hands on deck approach to get the support that is necessary to sustain this, because we have excellent programs, as you can see what Dan is doing, that the families need the help, for sure.
I wanted to add, just while we're discussing this, I know that we're missing one of our board members, but she did send me a statement that she wanted it to be read, so it can be part of the minutes and discussion, if I could do that.
I don't know, I don't know if you're permitted to do that.
I think that we can discuss it even more. She's not here, she's not participating via Zoom, so we will not be reading that tonight.
Okay.
But I would like to say, I know I've seen your hand, this is not the time for audience participation. It will not happen during this time. This was a discussion, this was brought to our attention by the superintendent and the treasurer based on the 5-year forecast. This is a discussion of the Board of Education doing audience participation, because there's no vote on this tonight, there's no decision made. Right. It was important that if in the future we will be going this route, that the community, the families, the community, the public knows that this is what we're looking at, something that's being discussed, and we wanted to do it at the end of the school year. We wanted to do it now, so it's not a surprise, but it's a discussion with the treasurer and the superintendent and the Board of Education. So there will be no a participation from the audience at this time. We do want you to hear the discussion. It is very important. We have not talked about this. We will not be voting on it. This is the discussion tonight. I know you saw it on the agenda, and that's exactly what we're doing tonight. So you would have an opportunity, of course, to voice your opinion now that you know that it's out there. We know why it's out there. We're looking at the cost of everything. We're looking at where we can make the cuts. So even with staffing, it's just it's a lot going on right now, and I just want everyone to pay close attention to the 5-year forecast, and I want everyone to come with your questions about why and where cuts are being made. And trust me, I know there's a lot of finger pointing, like, why aren't you cutting this? And we can tell you why we're not cutting this, or why we maybe need to look a little closer at this. And I don't know if people are kind of throwing out numbers. There were some numbers that we may have looked at. None of that is written in stone, but we get a chance to, well, maybe what if we do it this way, or what if we make the cost this, where it would be. We don't want hardships on our families. We want our children to participate. That was great news, hearing what the accomplishment they made during the spring. So I just want you to know that it is a board discussion with the superintendent and the treasurer, and we felt that it should be an open discussion. So during audience participation, you will have a chance to participate, and of course you can just submit questions to us.
The only other thing that I want to share with you guys is just some of the costs that people don't see when we talk about sports. It's the equipment. We pay trainers to come in and work with our teams. We pay for the protein and different things that the sports, athletes need to take in order to, before and after sports. We're paying for security. We're paying for the referees. We're paying for custodians. So there's a lot of costs that people don't see when they talk about the fact that the district is allowing our kids to participate in sports for free. Again, that doesn't mean that it's not something that we do. I'm just saying that we need to understand the cost that the district has been covering for years in order to participate in sports. So I just wanted, so you guys could hear all of the components that goes into the sports programs. No, and I appreciate all of that. Again, just wanted to make sure we, have in-depth conversation, think about all options. Because again, I know I've heard the 5-year forecast. How many times did I sit in that meeting? So no, I completely understand it. We want to see our district thriving and getting back to where we need to be. So I'm not, again, not saying 100% against it. Just want to make sure that we're looking at exhausting all options that we can possibly look at when it comes to it.
And we do have to look at just the rise of costs and everything. So it didn't just, we're still a part of that. Everything that is purchased within the school district is, sometimes it's double the cost. So, we still get the same amount of money in. That's one thing I always like that the treasurer stressed to us. I don't care how many houses are built. I don't care what the appraisal is. We still get the same amount of money. We're not, and unfortunately, we have to come to the community, which pays for what percentage of the expense of the school district? 75%.
Oh, wait, no, 39% is the state, so we're 61.
Yep. So the rest of it is on us. That's what we're paying. And so when everything doubles, it's just more money that's coming out of everybody's pocket. And everything is just so expensive. So we are looking in every area. I know what people are saying, and if they just would just take a closer look, like we're taking a closer look, listen to that 5-year forecast, look at those line items of what we're spending for things. A ream of paper, just even that, it's just, everything is just so expensive. And I really shouldn't have to tell you this because you see it in your own household. And so we're looking in every area that we can where we could, at least cut some costs in some of the items in some of the areas, so. Just want to say that, so, did you want to say something else? And board, of course, you too.
Well, just a quick question. Have we looked into what you mentioned about like concessions? If someone wants to play sports, that it's maybe an expectation or requirement that they participate in concessions or certain fundraisers, and instead of it just being an optional thing, but actually saying if you want your child to participate, you have to commit to 2 days out the season or whatever, just something. And then the other option is, when you mentioned about uniforms, is just like if you like lease a car, if you bring a car back, if it's messed up, you have to pay for it. So if uniforms come back and they don't come back in a decent manner, in a somewhat used but appropriate manner, then they just have to pay for it. That's just that can just be added to their statement.
I think those are good things, and that's why we're having this discussion, so I just wanted to mention that to the people that have their hands up, because we too are trying to find solutions where we don't have to come back to the families and students with, we're just looking for all kinds of solutions. So even if you have some solutions or some ideas of how we could save some money.
I just want to say to what you were saying, good luck with getting the parents out, because they took the concession stand, and if you work the concession stand, you got so many points, and that went towards your kids' basketball group or volleyball. I did concession stands inside, and Trish knows, you can't get these parents to come out and help do it. I gotta work, I gotta this, I gotta that, I can't do it tonight. Or they'll say, okay, I'll do Friday and Saturday. You get here Friday and Saturday, and you here by yourself. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you I can't make it. You ain't gonna get the parents to do it. And if you can get them to do it, you let me know how you did it, because it ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work. I don't care what you say. What?
There has to be consequences.
What
Because
consequences you gonna give a parent? Okay, you didn't show up so your kid can't play?
you can do that.
No, you can't.
You can pull the student if need be.
No, you can't. How you gonna pull a student for a parent not doing
That's
something?
why I'm saying, if you make it a requirement, then you are saying that the parent has to do something.
So you're gonna
Because
punish the kid because the parent didn't. If I don't show up and something comes and I don't show up, and you tell my daughter, well, you can't run track because your mama didn't show up. Oh, when their mama do show up, you better have the police.
I would say they can sit down and watch the rest of the team play.
Thank you for it, and I do think that we all have some very, very good suggestions and ideas that we're presenting.
I volunteered in sessions with my kids all the time, if I need be. Yes, it can be done.
I do think that we do need to take a closer look at all these ideas and suggestions. I mean, they are on record that we're coming up with. I know that it's a very touchy subject, and there's a little bit, but we are looking for that. And I was just at my little sidebar conversation, I had to ask Dr. Johnson, is there one sport or a sports that's actually carrying all the sports? And I guess football and basketball, because they have the gates. And so, we're getting some monies for that. So we just have to come up with some solutions to these great costs that we're incurring in that one area. That's just one area we're looking at based on the 5-year forecast. There are many that we're looking at, but we thought it was very important to bring this to the attention of the community and to the families at this time, and that's why the board is having a discussion about it. Did you want to add something else?
I'm trying not to, because I know we outside of exec. But, yeah, I was just gonna say, we will continue. As Tabby said, we're working nonstop to look at all avenues, in terms of cuts. I think the other misconception is what cuts will impact this. So I don't want people to, because you constantly hear about, we'll cut this position and cut that position, and a lot of times individuals are not aware that we are given federal funding to have certain positions, so even by us doing that, it won't help the general fund budget, if that makes sense. But we will continue to look at all avenues that are impacting the general fund budget. So I just wanted to, specify that, at the end of the day. The other piece is I know you didn't bring this up, Mr. Akins, I don't want me to, about the subs.
I was actually about to.
Yeah, but Mr. Akins had asked me, Ms. Carter, about like the subs, and why we use the ESC and have we used the ESC before? And I just wanted to answer that. I did answer it for both of you, but I wanted all board members to know that utilizing the ESC or an outside company, this is not a new concept. We previously used Wren Hill, then we used Rachel Wixie. Rachel Wixie then started working through the ESC, and now there is no partnership between Rachel Wixie and ESC. So we had, during COVID, most individuals had a very difficult time finding subs, even the Rachel Wixie and ESC. So we started like hunting and trying to find, and employees knew people that wanted to be a sub. As you also know, ODE lowered the standards on subs so that you didn't even have to have a 4-year degree and things of that nature. So as a result, the district did begin to hire. We still use the ESC. So some of the district subs were through the ESC, some of the district subs were through us. We were paying for district subs with COVID funds. There are no more COVID funds. Ms. Armstrong has talked about that several times in the 5-year forecast. In addition to that, we now renew our subs every single year. And we communicate that we will call individuals back, but we aren't always able to call everyone back. So I just don't want individuals to think that it's new that we now renew our subs, but under the law, we have to now renew them in order to even hire them back. But it is not a new concept for the Bedford City School District to utilize the Educational Service Center to hire our subs. In our organizational meeting at the beginning of every year, you vote on our ability to utilize the ESC to hire on individuals such as this. The other key piece of this is the cost factor that we paid to have subs. The point of utilizing COVID funds, a part of that, one of the reasons, was for us to be able to be competitive and retain employees and subs and things of that nature. There were various categories. So we, at that time, were able to pay a little bit higher, picked up single benefits, things of that nature because we had the COVID funds. So through that, it also became very difficult to manage in terms of the payroll, making sure we don't go over our budget. By us having all of our subs, not just a few here, a few there, your day-to-day sub, your district sub, or your building sub, go through some districts, some ESC, by us having them all go through the same process, that will also help us be fiscally responsible, better manage. We can say to the ESC, this is our budget, we're not going over this. I'll be honest, there are times I had a very hard conversation with our building level administrators to say, you are supposed to use your district or building sub first. Why are they sitting down in the hallway? You're calling the ESC and things of that nature. So we have to manage that. So the way to manage that is for everybody to go through the same process, meaning the payroll and all of that, then being able to make sure that they can automatically drop into a vacancy before they go to the day-to-day sub and things of that nature. So I just wanted to clarify that because it is not a new thing. But I feel like we got to get a handle on this when the cost comes back to the general fund. Want to add to that?
You said it all, but the only thing is, we were paying for subs through 3 sources. We were paying the ESC, we had our district subs, and then when neither of those worked, we had spot subs that we were paying. So there were 3 different revenue, different ways that we were trying to cover subs in the district. And so this is at least streamlining it and eliminating one of the ways that we were spending money. And again, we would have district subs versus the ESC or vice versa. And so this is just reducing it down to one source for covering some of the subs.
And that's good management. And I also want to say and stress that when we're talking about the different funding for different positions and different areas, that our 5-year forecast is our general fund. That's what we're looking at, our general fund, not our title money, not our federal funding, but our general fund. So that is what you're looking at when we're looking at the deficit in that area, and that's money that's coming directly from the general fund and not our federal funding. So you will hear, and I guess I just want people to listen to Mrs. Armstrong when she does that 5-year forecast, and we look at those different areas and how they're coded, that we need to really pay close attention of where that money is coming from. And that's the money that we're looking at now with the 5-year forecast, the deficit we're talking about, and where we're trying to make those cuts based on that money that comes from that particular fund. And it took me a while to grasp all of it too, and so, you know, it's good to have a discussion and talk about areas that we're looking at, and we just want to clarify that when we're talking about the 5-year forecast and general fund and other positions that falls under that. And we could give you a treasure 101 on that at some point with Mrs. Armstrong,
I think that's
because
part
we
of
have to
her
go through it
no
too.
that she gives. No,
I'm sorry, what?
No, I'm saying I think that's part of her no
No.
that she knows in the No, but I do want to say thank you for that clarification, because again, when information is put out without additional explanation, and people just put it out there without really putting the additional information and understanding under there, I appreciate you putting that information out there and explaining so everybody understands, and that it's just not, oh, here's what's going on, and no further additional explanation why we're just doing it. So, and for me to ask, I'm like, hey, I just want to make sure, because again, first year, certain things I know, but just to be able to have that additional information to clarify and to have the backstory to understand as to, yeah, we're just doing too much, and making sure that, again, we're enforcing and making sure everybody's on the same page and doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And I do want to say that too, about, especially about the sub, that was voted on and it was on the agenda May 2nd. And you know, the agendas are made for a reason. And there's so many things that's involved in it. You really have to read it, and we try to talk about it. We don't go over every item. We do talk about it, and I said as presented. You, as people, should really look at that and read it and see what's going on. We would be here 4 and 5 hours. We've been here a while tonight anyway, but if we went over everything, but it is available to you. And so with the sub thing, and that kind of got blown out of proportion, but it's something we do every year because by law we have to do it. And people don't realize that by law we have certain things that we have to do as a school district, and folks should really be aware of that.
And I appreciated the questions. The one thing I will say is that, you know, individuals might not always have all the information, you know, but I also feel like I have to publicly state that as a leadership team, we have to make sure that we also clearly communicate and articulate things to individuals. And so I'll be the one to say I'm very seldomly on social media. You'll see me post a few things every now and then, whether it's about, like, you know, my mom or a kid, very seldomly, or I'll, if I hear that there's things, and Jamie does a great job of putting some things out there, I'll respond to that, but I'm not on there. I know a lot of people utilize social media for their journalistic news. I will just state that, you know, so I appreciate, you know, as you hear things from the community that you ask, because it did lead me to have a conversation and to reach out to each of our subs, because they helped us in a very difficult time. And it would never, I would never want someone to feel like they're not, you know, valued. We can agree and disagree on, you know, who should be hired, but it's comes down to the communication piece, in that how we communicate and how we make people feel at the end of the day. So I think that's what I got from it. It might not have been all factual, but I got from it, obviously someone was made to feel as if they were not valued as an employee. So I sincerely apologize if that was the case, because that is not how anybody should be treated, regardless of who they are employed by or the position or the title that they hold. I just wanted to say that.
Well, I definitely appreciate you providing some clarity to that. When stuff is posted online, it's usually a one-sided thing without the context to kind of know what it means exactly. So I appreciate you coming back to the next meeting and then explaining it in more detail, because that lets people understand what's really going on and not just going by hearsay.
And letting everybody know that, when we were hiring subs, it was due to the COVID funds that we had. It wasn't just us putting money out there. So it was funds that we had that we were able to utilize. But now that we're getting back on track and making sure that we're staying fiscally responsible, as you say, to make sure everything's staying in that straight and narrow where it's supposed to go, and making sure that the public understands that, like, we're trying to stay fiscally responsible. We're not just out here doing any and everything. And like you said, when they're posting on social media, it's usually one-sided with no additional explanation where people don't fully understand. So appreciate you taking the time to explain.
Anything you understand, we still like to post a lot of negative stuff, so we're here to tell you all the positive stuff. How about that? All right, Board, are we good?
Yes.
All right, next on the agenda is executive session, 10.01. Can I have a motion, please, to go into executive session?
Motion to enter into the executive session to meet with legal counsel to discuss pending court action, to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee, and to consider the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of any real, personal, or other property interest.
If you could have a second, please.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carter and second by Mrs. Macklin. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. We will be going into executive session. We will not be voting on anything once we come out. So I thank everybody for coming out. We're going to take about 7 minutes. Should take you longer. And then we'll come back into executive session. We will see you on June 20th, our next meeting.